everybody, Lydia here. How you guys doing? Happy Tuesday. I am stopping by to share some insights with you today. I'm gonna give it a minute before I dig in to content, see if anyone shows up. I have a topic that I'm really excited to share with you guys about because it's wildly misunderstood, and doctors misunderstand it, health circles misunderstand it, and it can be a real problem. And so I wanted to go over why this one wildly overdosed, misunderstood, fat-soluble vitamin could be a total disaster for your health if you don't understand its implications in the body, how it works with other nutrients, minerals, and so on and so forth. So the vitamin I'm talking about today is vitamin D. If you guys have stuck around long enough, you already have heard me rant a little bit about the misuse of vitamin D. And today I wanted to really dig into it because people keep asking me, sorry about the noise. People keep asking me about it, and I work with this in my practice all the time, and I want to dig into it some more. So I'm actually going to pull up my notes and dive into this topic for you. So if you have questions as I'm going through this, feel free to leave them below. I want to say I really do not want to disrespect or bash doctors. What I do want to point out here is that our medical system is very oversimplistic when it comes to testing and assessing nutrition. So if you're going to your doctor regularly for your annual checkups, or maybe you go for some other health related issue and you're getting your vitamin D levels checked, typically you're going to be either told it's fine or it's too low. And that's all you're going to be told, and then you're going to be suggested to supplement. Now here's where the problem lies, is your doctor is only looking to change one marker via blood, okay? Nothing else. They just want to see your vitamin D level be in this certain number range that they're looking at. And by the way, that range varies from doctor's office to doctor's office. And some will want you to have it really high, and some will be more actually in a good range, believe it or not. But that said, there's so much variance out there that I want to bring clarity to this right now. Are you ready? So what is vitamin D? Why is it important? I think most of you are all really smart in here and you probably already know, but I'm going to go over it anyway. And because it's a little more complicated than it's just a vitamin. Okay, so the term vitamin D is actually referring to a group of fat-soluble compounds, okay? And it serves as a pre-hormone or a hormone precursor. So vitamin D is like a vitamin and a hormone all in one, all right? Or it helps your hormones. So basically what happens is vitamin D serves as a pre-hormone, and then it helps the active form of vitamin D called calcitriol. And then it's also responsible for regulating over 2,000 genes in your body. And nearly every cell of our body has receptors for vitamin D. So it is clearly very important. I don't want to dismiss that. Please don't misunderstand me today at all by saying vitamin D is not important, don't ever take it. But we're going to try to dig into more than just test your levels high or low. If it's fine, it's fine. If it's low, it's take it. There's more to it than that. Okay? So there are forms of vitamin D in our food, but generally speaking, we make vitamin D in our skin when it's exposed to UVB rays, ultraviolet rays. And the initial form of vitamin D that we get from the sun is called, bear with me, 7-dehydrocholesterol. Oof. And this travels to your liver, and then it's converted into a more active form of vitamin D. So really, if you want a fuller picture of your vitamin D, we should be testing the storage, which is what your doctor is probably testing, and the active form of vitamin D. And most doctors will not test that. That actually is important information to know, both forms. So I usually ask my clients to test both if they can. Okay? All right, so a little more about vitamin D. When it leaves the liver, it travels to the kidneys where it's converted one more time, and it becomes this highly metabolically active form of vitamin D called calcitriol. This is the 125 dihydroxy vitamin D. That's that active form of vitamin D that your doctor is probably not testing for, and they're only testing your stored vitamin D levels, okay? All right, so by that time, it's no longer considered a vitamin, rather it's a steroid hormone. So there's some components here about vitamin D that you need to understand and how it works in the body. Okay, so that's the starting point. Now, you've probably heard me tell you it can be dangerous to supplement vitamin D. I really feel like it's tricky business out there because you're going to read anywhere you go in a health-related circle about the merits of vitamin D, and everybody should take vitamin D and take 2,000 IU a day or whatever. And then there's no understanding of how it works in the body, what its cofactors are, or what your current biochemistry is, in addition to your vitamin D stored and active levels. So, that said, I want to educate you today, okay? So I'm going to bring a lot of value to this video because I'm really passionate about this topic. So I look through vitamin D with my clients at a much broader, deeper lens because I am a health detective, and it's my job to help people feel better, not worse. So I want to avoid the pitfalls that can happen when it comes to singling out any one nutrient and doing isolated supplementation. So vitamin D, a lot of times people are doing this on their own. They don't even test. They just read these articles and say, oh my God, I need vitamin D. I'm going to go take some. Please don't do that. If you take anything away from this video, please don't blindly supplement with vitamin D ever. And don't use vitamin D as a treatment to a symptom that you read about on the internet. All right, we just don't have enough solid scientific evidence about the long-term safety of high-dose vitamin D supplementation. All right, and there is some research saying that it can potentially lead to kidney stones. I don't know, how much, how long, that kind of thing. But what happens is that when your body tries to get rid of excess calcium, which is what vitamin D's job is, to help you take up the calcium in your body. But if your calcium can't get where it's supposed to go up effectively, or it's pushed way too much by too much vitamin D, you're going to have an excess of calcium, and it's going to need to go somewhere. And so what can happen is, this could be the body's mechanism of trying to get it out. And that's why sometimes it's possible to get kidney stones. Now, I don't know, how much you have to take, how long, all that, like I said. More than likely it would be a high dose long term, which, by the way, you guys, I see this all the time. People are taking thousands and thousands of vitamin D IU daily for a year, and they're like, oh yeah, I tested my levels, I think it was a year and a half ago. And they never stop the dose that their doctor told them to take back then, and they have no clue what their vitamin D is now. That's a problem. Okay? So if your body cannot regulate the calcium levels that it has, it can deposit throughout the soft tissues of the body. So this is a very real problem that too much vitamin D can induce in the body. Okay? It can even go into the arteries. And this is what I see all the time. I've seen it so much to the point where people really were feeling sick. Now, that's not always the norm. It's thankfully, a lot of times, it's not that extreme, but there have been cases where people were really struggling with their health because of too much vitamin D and blindly believing the information out there without digging deeper and trying to really understand how this works in the body. Okay, so I've especially seen this trend in health circles where women have issues like hypothyroidism. Oh my goodness, this is huge, you guys. In fact, there's a couple very popular thyroid websites, and I won't say any names because I really believe everyone out there who's trying to give information has the best intention. I just want to believe that. But you've got to be a health detective and never just supplement blindly just because you read it somewhere doesn't mean you should do it. That's why I'm really careful in here, you guys, to tell people what they should take, how much, all of that. You won't hear me saying that about most things. I try to be really careful about that. So there's all these websites out there, especially these thyroid ones that are really popular, and there are a lot of people taking a DIY approach. Totally get it. You know, you're just trying to help yourself. But there's all this advice being thrown around, and one of them is the high dose of vitamin D supplementation. Oh, here's this symptom you have, take vitamin D. You know, you've seen it before, right? So I've come to see this as a really big problem, and here's the reason why, okay? So because you know that I use hair tissue mineral analysis, what I'm looking at is all of the factors that affect minerals and the mineral system in the body. They all have a push-pull effect on each other. They have cofactor vitamins, so on and so forth. And vitamin D's job, like I said before, is to get that calcium where it's supposed to go. Now, the most common pattern I see on hair tests is an already elevated calcium and a low tissue potassium. Probably 90% of the hair tests I've seen, and I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these. And the most common pattern is elevated tissue calcium. And there's several reasons for this, but one of the problems is when you're taking too much vitamin D, you're going to throw that calcium out even further, okay? And the calcium and potassium in a specific ratio correlate with your thyroid function, okay? And so when we see this ratio elevated on HTMA, which by the way, it almost always is, you're just gonna have to believe me on this one. I could probably show you some examples, but I mean, I've seen hundreds of them. And so, and many of you in here have done hair analysis and you're probably like, yep, that's me. So this is your thyroid ratio. And what happens when this ratio is elevated is that you can't get your thyroid hormone into your cells effectively. So it's a slowed down cellular response to thyroid hormone. Oh my goodness, massive problem, right? So on a thyroid website where a lot of people are already hypothyroid, possibly on medication or hormone therapy, and they're being told, take all this vitamin D, take all this vitamin D, and their calcium's shooting through the moon, and they're becoming more thyroid hormone resistant. Now, this is not always 100% the case. There are people who have low tissue calcium. Okay, I'll get to that in a minute. But the majority have this high ratio of calcium to potassium, okay? So this is a big deal, especially when you're only taking vitamin D and you're not balancing it with other nutrients, okay? So that's the biggest issue I see with vitamin D is that there's a misunderstanding of how it works in the body, what cofactor nutrients are involved, and then that vitamin D is being recommended simply to get a blood level accurate. And that can vary from doctor to doctor, okay? All right, excuse me for a second. So think about this in terms of your thyroid health alone. Many of you in here probably are concerned about your thyroid health, especially women, ladies. I work mostly with ladies. And you're already experiencing signs and symptoms of hypothyroidism. So, you know, you don't want to make it worse. So this is what I want to dig into a little bit more today. I want to get into the cofactor nutrients for vitamin D. All right, so when it comes to isolated vitamin D supplementation, we're not thinking about these cofactors. No mineral or vitamin works by itself. If you think about that in nature, all these nutrients are in food in a range of other nutrients, right? So we always want to remember that all your nutrients work with other nutrients, and it's important to balance them. And that can be hard for just anyone to figure out because it's a lot of information to understand. You know, you got to have a degree in nutrition to figure this out. So if you just don't know, please don't take vitamin D unless you really truly have very, very, very low levels. And then make sure you're retesting. I'll get into that in a minute. Okay, so according to the Vitamin D Council, to get the most benefit from vitamin D, you must have other cofactors in your body. And vitamin D has a number of them. The fat-soluble vitamins are, anyone? Vitamin A, D, and K, as well as vitamin E, but we're going to mostly talk about the trio of A, D, and K. They all work together synergistically, and adequate vitamin A and K2 are going to help protect against the toxic effects of vitamin D. So that's really important. And quite frankly, it's so hard to get these nutrients in our modern day diet. Vitamin A is typically found in things like liver and egg yolks. We're not talking about beta carotene. We're talking about retinol. We're talking about vitamin A from animal foods. So you're not gonna, it's not gonna be as effective from plant foods. Okay? So vitamin A is hard to get in the diet. Vitamin K2 is even harder to get in the diet today. I have a whole entire training on K2, which I promise I will put a link for in here later. I think it's for practitioners though, but I'm gonna share it with you anyway. And I have a blog post. I'll post that later too. Okay, so if you guys wanna know more about this trio of fat-soluble vitamins, which I think a lot of you probably already do because many of you are studying this stuff and educated and eating real food. But I'll post those for those who are interested in learning more. So those are two biggies, okay? Also, sufficient levels of potassium and magnesium are going to be really important to consider in protecting you against vitamin D excess as well. And the vitamin D toxicity is only ever going to happen because of supplementation. Because your body can take this fat-soluble supplement and store it away if it can't use it right away. So if you're taking upwards of 2,000 IU of vitamin D a day for a long time, honestly, your body doesn't necessarily need that much every day all the time. So it's going to store what it can't actually use. And that'll go in your fat tissue, and it'll take time to actually get rid of it. So you're going to have potential imbalances and symptoms from that. All right, so, and the thing is most people are deficient in these few nutrients that I just mentioned. And I see it every day on hair tests, and doctors are not assessing all of these nutrients. It's not their job, you guys. Doctors' job is not to teach you about nutrition. That's not what they were trained in. So when you go to your doctor to get testing, do not expect them to know how to balance you. That's all they're ever going to do is say, here, take some vitamin D to raise your level. Honestly, unless you're working with like a naturopath or a more holistic minded doctor. All right. So I see this all the time. And one of the things that I actually want to talk about next is a little bit more is magnesium, because I believe truly, truly that all doctors should be testing for your levels of magnesium and not serum magnesium. That doesn't do us any good. We want the red blood cell count. We want the RBC magnesium. Now, you certainly can ask your doctor to test this for you. They might look at you like you're a little cuckoo, but you can certainly ask. I tell my clients to ask all the time. So it's worth asking, but you can also go out of pocket and get this yourself. We can take our health into our own hands to a degree. So while I'm mentioning that, let's talk about magnesium. You know, magnesium's a biggie. That's one mineral that I will say pretty much everyone can take a small amount of safely, all right? It's still important to know more. So magnesium's actually a critical mineral, and we don't get enough in our diet. We lose it very easily through stress, sugar consumption, medication, and more. And it's involved in every body function. It's required for thousands of critical enzymes everywhere in your body. So it's pretty darn important. It's also used to make ATP, and this is our body's main form of energy. So it's pretty important. If you don't have energy, you're probably like, ooh, I need energy. Give me some magnesium. And here's where I'm getting at is magnesium plays an important role in proper vitamin D activity and function. And it helps maintain calcium balance by modulating the sensitivity of our tissues to vitamin D. And the enzymes necessary to help the body use sunlight to convert into vitamin D are magnesium activated. Are we seeing the light bulbs go off here yet? Okay, so simply stated, vitamin D also needs magnesium to help it absorb calcium. And without magnesium, when vitamin D is given, it's going to raise your tissue calcium, which has an antagonistic effect on magnesium. So it's going to exacerbate a magnesium deficiency even further, which honestly has more detrimental effects, such as an increased risk for heart attack, or can even show up as panic attacks, by the way. And I've seen this a lot in women with high tissue calcium through hair analysis. Because what happens is when, like I said this a little before, when vitamin D drives up the calcium, both potassium and magnesium can be depleted, as well as your vitamin A through the liver. Vitamin A actually helps us hold on to our potassium. And both of these minerals have a balancing, stabilizing, calming effect on the body. Okay, so in my opinion, the RBC magnesium is a prerequisite to getting your vitamin D correct. So if your doctor isn't testing your RBC magnesium and you happen to be going soon to get testing done, ask for it. See what they say. You can even tell them, so I'm pretty sure that it takes magnesium to help me get my vitamin D where it's supposed to go. Can you just test it? And don't get serum. It doesn't do you any good to get serum. Make sure it's the RBC. If they won't do it and they happen to do the wrong one, it's like 40 something bucks to go do it yourself through walk-in labs if you have a LabCorp near you, okay? All right, vitamin K2. It seems like people are interested, so I'm gonna keep going, okay? Vitamin K2 allows your body to use calcium to perform a clotting function. So if your vitamin K is low, your body cannot use calcium in this way and it can't clot properly. Okay, that's pretty important, right? It also helps us to form and maintain our bones, which we have all heard a million times growing up. You need calcium for strong bones in those silly milk commercials. But our bones are not made of calcium alone, because if they were, they would snap right in half. We need so many things to have strong bones. So vitamin K2 helps maintain our bone and teeth. And it helps activate osteocalcin to use the calcium and deposit it where it's supposed to go. So in other words, vitamin K will help you use your calcium properly. And if we're deficient in it, and I don't know of any tests at this time to test your vitamin K2 levels, but again, I'll share you the link about the K2 with the training I did with Karan, so you can learn more about it and get educated on that piece. But most of us probably aren't getting enough of this in our diet, and so the worse off you are in K2 deficiency, the more likely you're to suffer from things like atherosclerosis or even calcification of your arteries. So this is a big implication in heart disease and cardiovascular problems. So K2 can really help with this. It's so important. All right, so simply stated, vitamin D increases calcium levels in the body. Vitamin K helps the body use calcium. So if one were to supplement with a high dose of vitamin D in the presence of a vitamin K deficiency, the long-term results could be disastrous. And I mean disastrous. So, food for thought here, right? Is anybody got light bulbs going off? Now we're going to talk about vitamin A a little bit more. Excess vitamin D supplements or without vitamin A will drain your body's reserves of vitamin A. And like I said, it's really hard to get this vitamin adequately in our modern day diet. and in kind of the right balance to that vitamin D maybe you supplemented with. Hopefully you didn't do that though. Okay, so vitamin A, D, and K are going to cooperate together to protect our soft tissues from calcification. And they'll nourish our bones and our teeth, and they help kids with adequate growth. So, natural preformed vitamin A consumed with a well-balanced diet, especially vitamin D and a strong immune system, vitamin D is a strong immune system modulator, and it's a contributing factor to dopamine regulation, one of our main neurotransmitters. I'm sorry, that's the vitamin A. I made it sound like it was the vitamin D. So vitamin A also regulates our female sex hormone, progesterone. How many women do we know with low progesterone? And this provides mood and fertility benefits. It acts as an antioxidant, is important for skin and cell regeneration. All right, I could go on all day about this, but I want to at least give you this takeaway about the fat-soluble vitamins needing to be in balance and the magnesium piece, because the magnesium has to be adequate before the vitamin D piece will ever quite iron out, okay? So zinc and boron are two other minerals that are also important, and I don't want to spend any time on that today, but I just want to mention it because remember, there's so many pieces to everything working in tandem and functioning properly in the body, and where everything needs to go to help each other go where they're supposed to go, so on and so forth. So, what are optimal vitamin D levels, and what do we do if our lab tests come back with low levels? I know you're asking that. True vitamin D deficiency is going to occur below 25 ng/ml in the blood. Typically, that's what they're testing when you've gone to the doctor and got your vitamin D test, is the ng/ml. I got a little pop-up to get rid of. Okay. But the problem comes when your doctors are recommending higher, like a way higher levels for storage D, okay? Anywhere between 40 and 100. I'll tell you a little quick story. A couple years back, and I know why this is the case now, because I have a vitamin D receptor issue, but I was taking vitamin D for a couple of weeks, just years ago, when I just thought, oh, it's winter, I probably need some vitamin D, I'll take a little bit for a little while. You know, you've done that, right? Maybe, or a lot of people have. And I did this even being a practitioner, and this is years ago. And I knew I was going to be getting my levels tested. At least I wasn't doing it completely blind, but I just thought I'll take a little bit for a little while. Well, when I got to the doctor and she tested my levels, they were over 100, which is crazy. That's insane. There's no need for that. And now I know why that happened for me. And I won't go into that, but there's several pieces of the puzzle that sometimes we're not thinking about. But my doctor said, oh, your vitamin D is great. I was like, no, it's really high. I'm like, it seems wrong to me. So that was a little alarming, but I figured it out, and I want to make sure people understand this too, so they aren't just blindly going about vitamin D. Because your doctors usually are not going to pick up on this. All right, so the range I like to see is between 35 and 40. Now, if it's a little lower and you're about to be out in the sun, and you really are going to be in the sun, and you're optimizing your magnesium and you're doing all of this other stuff, you might be okay. But if it's like really low, it's the dead of winter, you live in a northern state, you know you're not going to be getting sun, you might need a little bit of vitamin D supplementation. However, you want to make sure that you're taking it in tandem with all this other stuff and doing it in a balanced, holistic way. All right? So if you don't want to just take my word for it, maybe somebody that you will trust a little bit who's more of an expert is Chris Kresser. He just did a really great post about this. I think some of these guys, who's the other one? Chris Masterjohn, maybe. Some of these guys are really digging into this issue too. So it's not just me telling you this. There's a lot of health practitioners out there who are seeing this as an issue and bringing it to light. So there's some really, really good research out there on this. So between 35 and 40, maybe even up to 60 in some cases, but there's a lot of factors to think about here. So, okay, here's another question that I'm sure people are asking. Why is your vitamin D low even when you have supplementation or even when you're supplementing? Okay, because maybe you came to before this talk thinking that. One, you might not be getting the cofactors, so it can be actually used properly in your body and it can go into fat tissue storage. Two, inflammation or autoimmune or chronic inflammatory diseases, because our intestinal health plays a role in vitamin D and calcium metabolism. And you and I both know there's leaky gut is a big issue, right? And then the other one is genetic mutations. So there's vitamin D receptor mutations or VDR SNPs. I'm not going to go into that here. That's a little bit more complex than what I want to talk about today. I have one of them, and I now know that I can't just take a ton of vitamin D or I'll just shoot through the roof. So that all said, in terms of inflammation, it's really important to also test that active form of vitamin D, not just the storage form that your doctor typically tests. I'll go ahead and post the markers I like to see. If you guys are interested, remember I work with people all the time, so please reach out to me if this is a piece of your health you need help with, okay? I'm also going to post a PubMed article for you, so you can check that out if you like to read. But the active form of vitamin D is what you want to pay attention to in the case of inflammation. So if you have heavy inflammation in your body, a chronic inflammatory disease of any kind, or autoimmune flare, and leaky gut, this is going to be really important for you. There's also more, but I'm going to save that nerdy stuff for another time. Now, the best tests to check for vitamin D stores in the body. Okay, if there's one thing you take away from this video, it is to never, I have like all these things popping up on my screen. There we go. Supplement blindly with vitamin D, okay? Please don't just go out and take gobs of vitamin D for any length of time without testing. So you want to test your vitamin D status before you ever touch an actual vitamin D supplement. Now, I know people are saying, well, what about cod liver oil or what about fish oil? You know, generally speaking, that's probably fine because it's got the vitamin A in there. My favorite is Rosita's, by the way, because it's got a great balance of vitamin A and vitamin D. And you can eat it in food, that's fine. In some cases, people may need to avoid it if they have severe calcification issues, but that's an aside. So before you ever touch a vitamin D supplement, test. Go to your doctor. You probably can get a blood chemistry with vitamin D at least once a year. It's probably covered in your insurance. Just do it. This way you're not guessing. Then you want to make sure you're considering how it's going to affect calcium and other nutrients in your body. So the blood isn't enough always to give you the fullest picture. Okay, you're not going to know anything about your vitamin A or your potassium or magnesium. You can certainly ask your doctor for an RBC magnesium blood test as well. And keep in mind, vitamin D supplements have a 4 to 6 month half-life in the body. So they last longer in the body than sunshine vitamin D does. So it's not natural. Like vitamin D from the sun has like a 4 to 6 week, don't quote me on that, life in the body, whereas the supplement's way, way, way longer. So if you have a backlog of vitamin D in your tissues, you gotta eventually get rid of it. And it'll get stored in your fat tissue. Okay, so I also personally like to see a fuller panel with the vitamin D storage, the vitamin D active, and the RBC magnesium, partnered with a hair test, so we can address the calcium, the potassium, the zinc, the boron, make sure people are balancing all these pieces to their health. And then that way you're getting a more holistic approach to using vitamin D. And it's not just about these tests to see what these tests say. It's more to get the health that you want. So if you have hypothyroidism and you're concerned about making sure everything's optimized in your body and you don't make your hypothyroidism worse, this is something you really need to consider before you take vitamin D. It's just going to be really key. I like to see a RBC magnesium, about 6.5 is good. It can be up to 7. Below 6 is low. And pretty much everyone's first RBC magnesium has been low. I've seen so many low. So it just takes a little time to really optimize your magnesium. And I've talked about that in here before. We did this whole, topical magnesium challenge, like make sure you're getting that magnesium into your body. So that's going to be really important. There's more, but today I want to take a minute to see if there's any questions before I go. But first I want to say, definitely try to get your vitamin D from the sun during the months of the year that you are able to get out in the sun. I'm just trying to look over here and see if anybody has popped on to ask a question because I can't see it on my phone. So give me a second. So definitely get out there and get in the sunshine safely during the middle of the day. Expose as much skin as possible to the sun without getting burned. And you can really build up your vitamin D during the nicer months of the year where you can get outside and it's warm. Optimally, I think people, if they want to really have, optimal health and balance everything well, and you're going to your doctor regularly, it's a good idea to test in the fall before going into winter, especially if you're in a northern state and you're not going to be out in the sun much. And then again in the spring, before you're going to be back out in the sun, and just to kind of see how you did through the winter, and to just kind of reassess, how you should be supplementing, if at all. Okay. All right. Well, that's it. I feel like I took quite a bit of time to go over that, and I know there's going to be questions, so please leave them below. And I will be back with more Facebook Live videos for you guys. I asked recently in the group what topics of interest you had, and I'm going to start working on the list that's already there. But if there's something you want to learn more about so that you can better understand how to support your health, what is the benefit of, getting on a hair analysis program. It's not just about the test, it's like about the plan that actually fits you and your life. So if you want to know more about that at all, just let me know. And I am taking clients in April, so if anybody's ready to dive in, you're welcome to do it. There's a link at the top, and please feel free to share the Facebook group with anybody who's on a mission to really empower themselves with education and then take action to get a plan in place to really improve their health and support their health with the most knowledge possible. I really don't like the DIY approach when it comes to supplementation, especially vitamin D and certain minerals. It can really mess you up if you do too much too long. So I really want to make sure people are out there are doing things that are safe and effective for their health. So that's why I was really kind of excited to share this today, because this keeps coming up. It keeps coming up. So, all right, that's it for today. Thanks so much for stopping by. For those of you who did, I will happily stop back later and answer your questions, and I will be back next Tuesday. So if you have any thoughts on what you'd love to learn more about, go ahead and share them below so I can start to get that prepared, all right? Because I want to hear from you guys, and I want to know what it is you're hoping to get empowered by, okay? All right, thanks so much for watching. I'll be back next week.